Woot! We've had a busy week over at the course consultant, and last week I shared with you some really cool tools. I shared all about how you can actually pre sell your course or program using Stamp Card or a Thrive Card. I also shared with you tons with experts and other people who are creating digital courses and helping you grow your online income with your online business. And so today I'm super excited because I have a very special guest, Jennifer, who's going to be talking all about how you can actually make sure that you protect your digital products, courses, and contracts to make sure that you're protected legally. And I know that this can be a really scary subject, so I thought I would actually ask an expert all about this. So do me a favor, give a little virtual round of applause for Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me and congratulations on last week. I got to listen to most of it. It was a really fantastic summit.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, hey, if you are all watching here today and you have a question for Jennifer as it pertains to protecting your digital products and courses legally, as well as any questions about contracts for any services that you provide, do make sure that you drop a comment down below. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or you're just here and you have a question after this goes live on the replay, make sure that you ask because Jennifer has some great content that she's going to be sharing. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, Jennifer. Before I do that, I do want to go ahead and ask you a couple questions on how you got started. So, how did you get started in this line of work, and uh, what kind of made you want to actually talk about this subject? Because online courses and learning, it definitely seems like it is growing, but it is still a rather new sort of niche, if you will. So, how did you get started in this line of work?
So great questions. So as an attorney for over 20 years, this is the why I wanted to go to law school letter, application was about trademarks and copyrights. And so having a career in that has been a real blessing and fun and intellectually challenging for me. And I get to work with people in just about every industry. So I've firsthand seen how intellectual property applies to everyone. And one thing that when as a trademark attorney, you will see, especially startups, when you might not even think about trademarks until you're about 4 years in business. I've seen that in real life and real practice. And so about 4 years ago, I decided that I really wanted to meet people before that, have some classes and education so that you were aware of copyrights and trademarks and all the things that you should be concerned about in your business after you've done your business plan and got your bank account and stuff like that. And so I've been slowly rolling out classes. I've taught locally through economic development agencies in my town, and a couple years ago went, wait, why am I not doing that you know online for myself? So that's when this journey started. So I love to teach. I've taught at the university level. Um, and I just think it really helps people to be proactive, to know about this and not be bullied. It's a scary space, especially when you're not only starting a business, but then, as you say, in this new space online, especially during the pandemic, seeing a lot of growth. I think the time is really important for people to really understand their rights and how to protect their work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have been seeing a lot of big time course creators actually complain or mention that other people have copied their work. And unfortunately, because as digital course creators, our information is so easily accessed if you actually purchase, we want to make sure that we're protecting it legally. And so, as you said, it might not be something that most people think about, but having some sort of protection is helpful. So, tell me a few questions because I do feel like I don't know enough about this subject.
Mhm.
So you're here as an expert sharing with me your knowledge. So thank you. Tell me a little bit more about how does a course creator or someone who actually creates content online protect it legally? I don't know where I would actually start. So tell me how you would recommend one of your clients. And of course, I know this is not legal advice. This is just from your knowledge and experience. So just wanted to point that out there.
No, I appreciate it. Disclaimers are always good. You always want to have those. Uh, so, there's,
Your knowledge and
oops, I
experience.
just managed to turn my phone on there. Sorry about
That's
that.
okay.
So, um, uh, there are many different avenues for protecting for your courses and your digital content, but what I really want to focus on today is a little bit is copyrights and contracts. So, just to play intellectual property, which I mentioned earlier, is an umbrella term for patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. So, those are four very distinct things. Um, Online content, online courses, the main focus is going to be your copyright protection. So, copyright protects an original creation, so it protects this video that you're creating right now. It protects workbooks and all kinds of original content that you've created. So that is key to know. It is important to understand that it doesn't protect an idea. So we all, we're all teaching classes out there, right? We're all creating our things. That's why we're here listening to this today, is because we've got a project in the works or we've launched it already. And so I can teach a course about how to protect your copyrights and trademarks, and so can someone else. So the idea itself isn't protected, but how I deliver it, how I write it, how I record it, all of my actual deliverable is what is protected by copyright. So it has to be under the law what's called tangible. So the easiest example is if I won't pick up my phone because I'll turn it on again. But if I were to pick up my phone and take a photo, right then I would have a copyright in the photo I just took.
Hmm.
And so that's the idea of tangible. That's how fast it could be. It doesn't have to be, if I want to edit it and do a lot of things, then when it's done, it's done. So when your course is complete, then you would want to consider that the copyright date. So you have a copyright in your works from the moment it's created for your entire life plus 70 years.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
really long, yeah, it's a really long time. So that's why when you hear intellectual property, really think of it as property, right? Who do you want? This course blows up big and you've got royalties and licensing agreements, right? Who gets that revenue after you're gone? Is it the business? Is it your family, best friend, charity, whatever, makes sense. So it is, I like to point that out a lot. One, because it's just important to know. And two, it makes an impact when you're like, oh, this isn't just the one thing I'm doing. It's a long-term, benefit of the copyright law. So it's important to know copyright attaches when it's finished and tangible. And then a separate step that you want to do, and I talk about, is getting copyright registration with the Copyright Office. So
That's awesome.
that, yeah.
Yeah, so let me just stop you for a second because we talked about how does somebody get started. So the first thing it sounds like what you're saying is number one, think about this as a project for a long period of time, not just from the time that you actually publish it out there. As you said, think about the legal aspects, and then the second thing you mentioned was actually consider the time of when you publish it. Is that right? So when you actually have the works created, like for instance, the workbook is published and it's up for grabs for people to actually have in their hands, or the so I guess my follow-up question is, what is the date? What is that date? How do you determine that date? Because if someone were to actually publish it, let's say that a digital course is actually published online, but they haven't started selling it. Do you think that by selling, I mean that they haven't created a way for people to buy? Is it the date that they actually say, this is up for grabs, you can purchase it now? Is that the date that you would consider conception? Because I know we're getting a little technical now, but I'm curious.
No, I think it's a really great question, and I have to give the lawyer answer of it depends, which is
Yes.
which is why I started a blog, which I'm coming back to this year, called Potentially Awesome, because I was tired of saying it depends. So I would say that's potentially awesome. Let's talk about it.
I love
Um,
it. Potentially awesome. That
so
is potentially
yeah,
awesome.
it's potentially awesome. So it's a real term of art with the Copyright Office, and it makes a difference on how you file an application with the Copyright Office for registration. And because of that, I have to say it depends, because it would depend on your particular product and the timing. But I would say, broadly speaking, if I've written a book and it's complete in my mind, but I haven't put it out for publication, it's not been published, maybe in a traditional sense or in the ebook sense, then it's unpublished. If
Mm.
it's not available and out there, um, So I'll just leave it at that. It's sort
Yeah.
of a broad distinction that needs a little more clarification. It's more situation specific.
Yeah, yeah. So we're coming now to the point where people are like, okay, I've got this course. It is now available for purchase. We'll just imagine that in this particular scenario, it is published. We want to go through actually protecting it. And now we're at the stage where we need to consider going through these steps. If I were someone who was actually ready and said, yes, Jennifer, I need your help, what would that next step look like for working with you? If I wanted
Well,
that protection.
sure. Well, there's certain things what I love about. So when I was saying copyright starts right when it's tangible and fixed, right? So we go back to that photograph that you took on your phone. Let's say you printed it out today as well and framed it. It would have you could put the C in the circle, that what's considered the copyright notice, or sometimes you'll see all rights reserved. There's different international components, but I'm just speaking US based. So you can see the C in the circle, your company name or your name, depending on who owns the photo, and the year. And that's putting people on notice. So literally, you have a copyright in your work right then. That's the key to understanding that piece. What you can do if you need to, from a business standpoint, registration is key. You can file for registration with the Copyright Office, and that's copyright.gov, and I'll put these things in the links later. Um, but um, an application for registration is the next step. You don't need a lawyer to do it. You can do it yourself. I provide classes on education and training that'll be rolling out on that. Um, you file for it, and there are different applications. The application process is online, and it helps you navigate through that. But once you have a registration, and that's really important to think about as a strategy. Now, the applications right now are, depending on which one you file, and there's certain rules, it's either $35 an application or $55 an application. So lower cost, but it's still a cost. And if you're producing a lot of things, that adds up really quickly. So it becomes a business decision and strategy to decide what you're going to cover. But what you want to do is file for registration, because if, like you were sharing, those course creators are saying, hey, I'm being copied, you know, I'm seeing people talk about whole websites being copied, their
Mhm.
whole course being copied. You know, there's all kinds of things. So if you want to sue someone for copyright infringement, which is at its base level, someone copied your work, literally copied it, right? It's copyright infringement. You want to file a lawsuit. Um, and there's other steps in between there that you can take. But if you end up needing to file a lawsuit, you have to have a copyright registration in order to do that. There's some new things coming out in small claims court, so I'm talking about the more traditional approach here. Um, but if you have to file for a copyright registration on an expedited basis, you're like, crap, someone copied me. I have to go after them. They're not going to settle this. I have to, go out, full out here. The application becomes $800 plus that $55 or
Mhm.
$35. So strategy is looking at, if this is your main premium course that you're rolling out, or if you have the budget, protect all of them, and you apply online and protect it.
Okay, great. So
And
I think one thing that I know that can be really stressful for people is number one, seeing their work copied. I know that
Mhm,
if you put lots of blood, sweat, and tears into the specific framework, into the way that you go about actually purchasing or going through the process of creating this great course, this great program, this book, whatever it is that you created, now you're seeing someone copy it, right? So and I see that a lot on Facebook groups. I unfortunately have seen people say, "Well, I published this blog post article and someone scraped my website and they actually published the exact same content. They didn't even change anything." Or
mhm,
I see this person, they have actually purchased my course, they've taken all of the contents, and now either A, they're reselling the contents, or B, they're actually repurposing it into their own digital product, their own program, their own
mhm.
membership. So I know that there's a couple ways to actually start the communication. I've heard other people at least say, hey, why not send them a cease and desist letter or
Mhm.
actually approach them and say, I noticed that this occurred at this time. This is actually my intellectual property. So what you're saying is, if for some reason they don't settle, and they're not going to take it down, either they're non responsive or they communicate back and just feign ignorance or say that they actually published it before you. What you're saying is that that whole application process can get a little bit muddy. It's better to do it beforehand. Let's say, like, after you publish your actual creation, your product, your course, or whatever it is that you're selling. Is that right?
You can actually, that's accurate. You can actually file applications for registration, whether it's unpublished or published. There's
Mm-hmm.
some distinctions in the application. I think you have peace of mind to make it a culture in your business, a process in your business that you register these things as you move forward in case something happens. Infringement is happening a lot faster now. So there are things you can do. There are DCMA takedown notices, right? You say this is infringing. Um, I've seen an infringing site just a couple months ago. This woman had published her ebook, and 2 weeks later, it was available for free on this site,
Mm.
full thing. And when I went to look at it, their DCMA takedown process was misleading. So it's
Mm.
important to understand what that is, because if they're non-responsive, you can go to the ISP. There's a lot of places that you can go outside that, but what their language said is don't go to those other people. It will slow the process down.
Really?
Yeah,
Mm.
so that's why the education and is important. So you can send this. Sometimes people hired a graphic designer. I was following this woman. She was doing a 5-day challenge. This was last fall, and getting the emails and the excitement and the Facebook posts. And I'm a night owl, so I would see these things, and so it really caught my eye when it was completely out of that sort of build up to the summit challenge talk, and it just started with "I'm sorry."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this really grabbed my attention. And her assistant, virtual assistant, whoever this person was that she had hired to
Mm-hmm.
write copy for her, had actually copied someone else's work without, she didn't
Oh.
know. And so she was mortified. And it was one of her clients and customers that pointed this out in her Facebook group. She's like, hey, that belongs to someone else. So she was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely mortified, obviously terminated that person and had to fix all this. So sometimes it's resolved in, you know, you can go to someone and they legitimately didn't know it was copied.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people are just brazen about it and they're like, yep, I absolutely, people, I'll see in a lot of groups that people say, oh, when creators are talking about this, I'm so frustrated, I've been copied, right? And people will say, oh, that's so flattering, you must be doing something right. Or, well, don't worry about it, you have your own voice that's unique and different than someone else's. But when you're actually being copyright, it's not flattery, it's copyright infringement. And I have a little photo that I usually put if I see that in groups, because it's, you've worked so hard to create this course. I'm creating courses and I'm like, am I done yet? No. Like it's just, you put so much thought and effort into this and research and your expertise, and then you figure out the lighting and keep figuring out the lighting, as in my case, and just doing all the things, and then to have someone just copy it and try and sell it as their own, it's heartbreaking, it's frustrating, and it's damaging to your business. So I would definitely say seek registration, with the caveat that it does add up. I get it, especially when you're starting out. Even $55 can be a stretch. But when you are infringed, there is a bit of peace of mind you're giving yourself to be able to go after them right away without that additional. I've seen people find out they're infringed in a non class setting, and over 35 designs were copied,
Mm-hmm.
and telling them what they could do, but it was going to be $850 per application to be able
Mm.
to see these people. So times 30, that's just a
That's
non-starter. right?
Yeah. And especially for, a lot of the folks here in this group are maybe solo entrepreneurs or business
Mhm.
owners who are just starting out. And it's a lot of capital to put up front to actually try and fight, especially if maybe the other business is actually bigger or has more assets that they can throw into this, which is really just a frustration. So I'm glad that you're able to share these tips. So, Jennifer, tell me a little bit more about the actual number one. I guess let me go back to what I was going to say is I've seen other people actually create terms and conditions on their checkout cards to actually make sure that it's actually expressly said that this is originally created. Do you have any other tips for people who are maybe like in the interim between the published of works and actually going through the registration process to make sure that they're legally protected?
So you definitely want to make it very clear on in any touch point that you have with a buyer, right? And that could be they come to your website. So the terms and conditions on your website need to state that, the content on your website is, to the extent you've created it or own it, there's this concept of work for hire. So if someone else created it, lots of different nuances there. So your website terms and conditions, all of that. But when you have a contract with someone, I go to your website to buy your course. I'm not just here's the money, I get the course with nothing in writing, right? You want it to say who's getting it, who's delivering it, what they're getting. Is it a lifetime thing? Is it access for a year? This is where the contracts really come into play, and you want to always have your contracts, your agreements in writing, and you always want to make sure they say what you think they say. Right? So getting understanding those terms, but you always want to, and you can set it off visually that these courses are your intellectual property, that the names and the content, and they're all your it's copyright protected or trademark protected, and that it is an infringement. You can talk about things that it is there for their personal use only, not for resale, lots of things. So you want to make it very clear in the contracts, the purchase contract, the terms and conditions, that they're agreeing to this. And it can also be, in your membership groups, different platforms, however you're interacting with people, you want to say that explicitly. So if they come back and say, "Oh, I didn't know," or, you know, "No, you never said that," you can point to the agreement.
Yeah.
And I know people don't like to read terms and conditions. People click through all the time, but at the end of the day, that is a contract, and so you need to know that when you agree to them, and you also want to make sure that you're not just copying other people's terms and conditions from other websites. You're like, oh, I know I'm supposed to have that and a privacy policy, and just grab someone's, because they are contracts. So you want to make sure it's very specific to you and to your jurisdiction.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. So, just to recap, if you're just tuning in or if you've been tuning in, I'm here with Jennifer. She's talking today all about how to protect your digital products, courses, memberships, and content legally. I know that this is not maybe the first thing you think about when you're creating a course, but I do think it's very important, and I'm glad that Jennifer's here chatting with us about this. So, we've talked about making sure you know your published date, you understand that that is the inception of a new, beautiful
No,
piece
I
of.
want to clear that up. It's
Yeah, go
not,
ahead.
you have a copyright from the minute you create it. So don't attack, publication is a different thing, and a different part of the process. But when you finish it, it doesn't have to be published for you to have a copyright in it. So I want to
It's
get very,
even
very
better.
clear on that. Yeah. So you take that photo with your camera or your phone today, you have a copyright in that. You finished your uh, uh, ebook today, you have a copyright in that. You don't ever, it can sit in a drawer for the rest of your life. You still have the copyright in that. So I just want to make that very, very clear that while publication does matter when you're for certain things, when the copyright attaches is right away, and you don't have to do anything for that. You get it when it's complete and finished. You finish that painting, done, copyright. So that's why you want to keep records, and pay attention to the years when things are released, because again, you have copyright protection for your whole life plus 70 years.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
thanks for
great.
letting me jump in on that.
Thank you so much for breaking that down. I'm not an expert in this, so this is all great. Okay, so we talked a lot about the different things you could should consider, but keeping all of what Jennifer has said in mind, you definitely want to make sure that this is something you're considering in the entire process of your creation. I want to also point out some really great tips that Jennifer mentioned. That she has some great trainings that are going to be coming up that are going to go more into depth about this. So if you've been thinking about, hey, I just need someone to ask questions about this topic. I'm not quite sure where I should get started. Definitely make sure that you watch for what Jennifer does. She's got some great tips. I'm going to go ahead and share a link down in the below the comments area with some access to some information for what she does. But I know we talked about contracts and we talked about making sure that your disclaimer or your terms and conditions were there. Do you have any other recommendations for maybe people who aren't actually course creators or they're an aspiring course creator and they want to actually protect themselves during client work? Like, let's say it's a freelancer who actually offers graphic design. We've mentioned that a few times. What can they do to protect their work as well as maybe working with clients on a project?
So great questions, and again, that comes to first contracts, right? So you want to have your contracts are very clear about the services you're providing and the scope of work, um, and all of those fundamental things. So that basically, what you want to think about is, I've spent a lot of years as a litigator, so I've seen things when they fall apart. And what you come back to when you are trying to sort this out, whether negotiations or mediation, is you look at the contracts. And so if it's not a written contract, do we look at email exchanges and things like that? So it benefits you to have a contract that really is clear on the terms. Now, for graphic designers, especially, and people that hire graphic designers, I know I can go to, let's say, I'm doing a brand package and they're gonna come up with three concepts for me for my new project, and I get to pick one of them. Or I could buy all three if I want to do that. But the idea is I'm going to pick one of the brand concepts that's what I've paid for. And they are going to, so that graphic designer owns the copyright in those designs. They've
Hmm.
created them, they're the artists, they're the one that created that whole thing. So as a business, they fully intend for me to take one of those because that was the deal, right? We had a contract to do that. So what their contract should specifically say is that they, for whatever of the three I purchase, they're assigning the copyright to me. So I become the copyright owner, but they retain the rights in the other two concepts. So they can reuse them, they can use pieces of them, whatever they want. And that's really critical. So an assignment of copyright gives the whole copyright to someone else. Okay. Now, when you are um, creating courses and you maybe want to license it, maybe you get an opportunity to license your course to a university or somewhere. That's giving the rights for a specific period of time. You still own the copyright, but you're licensing those rights out to someone for a short period. Now, what's really important about that assignment is that the graphic designer wants to make sure. Usually, I see this all the time. It's not in the contracts, and it's just because it's assumed. You're like, well, of course, it's my career. I make stuff for other people. I get to do what I love, and I'm helping people, develop their brands. But it needs to be in writing because a copyright assignment isn't real, isn't valid under the law unless it's in writing. And so what that means for the graphic designer is that if there's ever a copyright dispute, you did this 3 years ago and there's a copyright dispute, you're considered the owner of the copyright. It might be drawn into stuff that you don't, you know, need to be drawn into. So there's that. So if you're the buyer, make sure that it's in the contract as well. Um, I would say that in any, if you're a consultant, whatever it is that you're doing in your contracts, you want to make sure that you're very clear on. Um, they can be plain language. They don't have to sound like Shakespeare, right? They can be visually appealing, all these contracts, just to be very clear on the terms. You want to make sure that you're explaining what you're delivering when they can get that. If you are a life coach or um, Gosh, I don't know. You're someone that helps grow people's businesses. You want to have disclaimers that, on your websites and in your contracts and all kinds of things that are, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. This is, you really want to protect yourself. You don't want to have someone come back at you and saying you gave them medical advice when you didn't. So in the contract space, there's the what you're delivering and how it goes, and then contracts are also written. There's a bunch of clauses in there. You want to make sure that you have them in case things fall apart, right? If there's a misunderstanding in the contract, it says how we're going to handle that misunderstanding. We're going to talk to each other first, then maybe we'll go to mediation, and if that doesn't resolve it, then court. you know you want to make sure that if you live in California, that the contracts are resolved in California. That's the important of if you grab a contract from someone else and it says New York, and then you in your contract you have to go to New York to solve things. So
Yeah, very important stuff, and especially really hard to navigate. I feel like with online business owners who might be remote or travel, so it's definitely something for people to think about all of these different steps. So Jennifer, I know that you have this is just the tip of the iceberg, if you will. It's not like the day I said, okay, Jennifer is going to teach absolutely everything she knows about her knowledge. So I want
you will
people to
all
be
fall
able
asleep.
no, I think what I want to make sure is that today people see this is important. Today people can get the idea to get started, and then in the follow-ups, in whatever it is that you're working and sharing with, people can definitely be able to take that next step and actually put legs on it. Take that next
Hmm.
idea, protect it, make sure that you have all of your assets protected, if you will.
Yep,
so, so
exactly right.
so, what exactly would you say to someone who wanted to learn more about you, what you're up to? Can you share with us a little bit more about what next steps you do? How do you help people? What other things are in the pot, if you will?
Absolutely. So um like you put my link in there, and that's going to lead to all my social media and some current offers, things like that. I've got a membership that's starting in June, and the idea is for people who it's one class a month, so it's going to be on copyright and trademark, and of course I forget all the topics while I'm speaking live, but this would be a founding membership price right now, and so every month there's a fundamental course. So we go more into copyrights, more into trademarks. Um, that would be live with me. You would have access with that. There is a separate. There's 3 times I would be live in the group. The second time would be Q&A about 10 days after that first one, so that if you've watched the replay or if you had time to implement, then we have a Q&A to help you, navigate that particular course. And then in the third seat, part of my job and my whole career is advising and consulting. So it's more of a hot seat. You bring any business issue, let's bring a problem, let's see if we can solve that. And then rolling things out as it goes forward. It's a new membership model, so it's going to be fun to figure it out. I am also rolling out templates. So these contract issues, there are certain things that would fit your situation. So I'm doing that. And I am really excited. And then I also have higher end courses. I have trainings on how to file your own trademarks. Um, Ones will be rolling out there. The copyright uh, um, filing process, there's different things that you file, so they kind of need their own training. So those will be rolling out as well. And then in about 2 weeks, I am launching this course for course creators. So we get into some details about um, well, we get not in some details, we get way more in depth on how to protect your course and help you identify your own course and what's protectable. So
Yeah,
I love to
great.
teach. This is all through my entrepreneurship collective business. So my disclaimers are that there's no attorney-client privilege in that, attorney relationship in those courses. I'm coming from the educator and entrepreneur side of my life experience. And then in the group programs, I think it's just really important to help ask those questions and grow. Because when you asked me earlier, these courses and things came out from all the advising I've been doing. And some people would say, well, I filed for my LLC with the state, so I have my trademark, and be like, nope, that's an entirely different analysis, and let's talk about it. So that was actually the beginning of all these courses getting started, is breaking down what feels like the windiest road when you're starting out as an entrepreneur. Like, you're like, I have all the things to do, and they turn on themselves. And so I just give you clarity, and I help you develop a roadmap for when you're ready. You have the knowledge of all of these subjects and know how to protect yourself, and also not to be bullied. I see people get copyright notice, takedown notices or infringement notices that have no basis in reality, but they're very scary to receive. So you want to be able to assess that as a business owner, because that's one thing I'll finish here in saying. As an intellectual property attorney, you're not just plaintiff and defense. You handle both sides all the time, and as a business owner, you will see that. Is someone infringing me or accusing me of infringing them? So the education is key, and feeling confident in it, and so I break it down and support you in that.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, I know I learned a lot today, Jennifer. I feel like it's
Oh, good.
definitely, yeah. So, if anything, I've learned something. And we've got a lot of great, viewers here. And let's see, Ross, thank you so much for sharing. And I hope that this has been helpful for you, who I know you actually do lots of virtual events. So, definitely something to keep in mind and, while you're creating. Other thing I just wanted to point out is, as Jennifer said, I did pop some resources in the link for Facebook. So if you are streaming on YouTube, make sure you head on over into my group, Courses on Facebook. There's lots of great stuff here. All right, Jennifer. Well, I'm going to make sure that this link is available. If you're watching the replay, make sure you click on hashtag replay. A quick one thing I do want to mention, if you are not following Jennifer, do that. She hosts lots of fun rooms on Clubhouse, she's on Instagram, kind of just laying the groundwork, if you will. And also, if you are looking for other things that you really want me to publish and you're asking me, hey, I have this question about this topic, let me know, comment below, because I'd love to have more people in this group to share about the knowledge for course creation. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to be behind the scenes interviewing some other fun guests, but I want to make sure that all of you guys are getting what you need. So hopefully this was helpful. One last thing I want to mention for anyone who is watching. If you have not already, make sure that you grab your spring bundle. I've been talking about this for a week now, but I super hope that you grab it because it is an incredible investment in your business. You'll be able to learn how to fast track your growth through courses in digital marketing with one big fat bundle. It's super awesome, and so many great resources are included in this. I can't wait to share that with you. So if you want to grab it, it is available. If you have felt that I've supported you at all, do consider purchasing, because it does make sure that I keep the lights on and that I keep you guys happy with well-informed information. So that is about it. Jennifer, thank you so much again for joining us today. I know you and I have a little bit of a chat here on Instagram coming up soon, kind of a little recap, if you will. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, Jennifer, how can people find you on Instagram? If other people aren't already aware, I'm at the course consultant. Let's have back over,
And
Jennifer.
and I'm at Entrepreneurship Collective.
Entrepreneurship Collective. Okay, cool. So, Entrepreneurship Collective on Instagram. You heard it here. I'm going to make sure that this is where you find her on Instagram, and then you can find me at the Course Consultant. I'll see you over on Instagram soon. Make sure you check out these super awesome resources. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Melody.
All right. Thanks so much, friends. I'll see you over on Instagram.